LinkedIn Live session. Today we are going to talk about rebranding. But before we move on to the main part, let us quickly go through our vision, mission, and our values. So we enable brands and startups to resonate with their audiences affordably and efficiently. Our mission is to apply branding, digital e-commerce, and design capabilities to enable startups and brands to grow, build meaningful connections with their customers, and meet their needs with affordability and excellence. The values that we cherish are integrity, honesty, cooperation, constant learning, and principled entrepreneurship. They help us deliver the results that we promise. How does it work? We start by doing the right thing, even if nobody is watching. We depend on each other because this is a team. We develop ourselves and others by constantly learning. We drive efforts like an entrepreneur because we take accountability for our actions and learn from our mistakes. All of these help us deliver the results that we commit. Now, coming to the main. Okay, so rebranding. It is something which we hear quite often. A lot of companies, they change their logos or their color palettes, and then they say that, you know what, we have rebranded. And we have companies which do much more large scale rebrandings too. But in a lot of cases, what we see is that it doesn't work out. This evolution doesn't work out. So today we are going to look at why this failure happens, what actually is rebranding, is it just a logo change, and what makes a rebranding successful. Okay. So first, okay, let us try to understand what it is. Okay. Rebranding is not just changing your logo or your color palette. In fact, if you don't know how to rebrand or do a bad job there, you will see that you are facing losses. Poorly executed rebrands, they can tank you. Like 20 to 40% of an existing customer base can just be wiped out. And of these brands which actually don't do a good job there and they see losses, almost 70% of them never go back to their original market position. Okay, so you have to understand how to make it work. Otherwise, it does not really, translate into revenues or better market position. And one of the things that we want to say is that when your company is in trouble, rebranding may not actually save it. What we have seen a lot of businesses, they look at their finances or something in the company does not work out, there is a reputation problem, and they think that, okay, let us rebrand. So that will wipe the slate clean, or it will give them a fresh start, or everything suddenly starts working. Okay? It does not happen like that. It can only make things worse. So you have to know what rebranding is, when it can solve your problems, what problems it can solve for you, and how to do it right. Okay? And like we said, just changing your logo or letterhead, something like that, it does not, translate to rebranding. Actually, it is much more, because if you change your logo and then you are expecting suddenly your sales will go up or people will suddenly just start talking about your brand, it will not happen. And they seem very surprised that despite their best intentions, it did not happen, but it was never meant to.
Shukti, this generally happens because most of the people think that when they're rebranding, they just change the logo, make it more dynamic, make it more colorful, make it more edgy, and everything will happen. It is not. Because branding is not about just your logo. Branding is all about what people feel and think about your brand. And that only happens when you as an organization start to put your weight behind it. What is that you want to communicate? What is that you want to stand for? And many of those things do never gets communicated just by changing logo. Nothing changes. It's like, suppose you just change your shirt, do you become a different individual? Just because you have changed your shirt, will people start taking you more seriously? No, it will not happen like that. So, rebranding is not about just changing the logo or the color or the font or the website. Rebranding is a process where you rethink what you stand for, and what you stand for that you make some necessary amendments in your logo and color scheme and font and website design and things like that. So that's an accompanying part. That's not the main thing. And whatever you want to stand for has to be relevant and differentiated for your consumer. Many times, what happens that when you do rebranding, you change the logo color, things like that. You start to talk about a new tune, you start to say something new, and people reject it. And if they reject it, it's going to be very, very heavy. So, don't just change the logo and the color. Change the way you think, change the way your people think. Change what you want people to believe, and what you want them to believe has to be relevant and differentiated for your consumer and your customer. If it is not, it is bound to fail.
Yeah. And I would like to actually, step aside from what Avina said and say that, yes, definitely change for relevance and all that. But before you do that, always have a clear idea about why you are rebranding, because that is something which you have to think about. If you don't know why you are doing this, trust me, you will make mistakes and it will cost you. Okay, so that has to be clear as well. And we will see this in the presentation. We will see this. Okay. See, first of all, understand this. Rebrandings are very expensive. You're not just changing, your logo or color palette. In terms of budget, in terms of time, organization, energy, a lot gets invested. And if you have physical collateral, let's say you are a D2C business and you sell, let's say, toothpaste, and you're rebranding. So all those packaging, the logos on your warehouses, on your letterheads, everything is changing. That will take time and energy and human effort. Okay. So if you don't know how to measure whether rebranding is actually working out, then you can be sure that it will not give you good results. Okay. And sure, the thing is, the problem isn't always the design. Yes, we have seen companies uh, uh, undertake really bad design decisions with rebranding. But the problem is more than the design, is the thinking that's behind it, which causes these problems. Okay, a lot of people, they think that they have a great plan in place. They know what they want from their rebrand. They approve all the collaterals and all the visual aspects of it. And then when they launch, backlash starts, or things just go downhill. Okay? So you have to think very, very carefully. Okay? You have to think whether you know why you are doing this, whether you know how to deploy this, how to phase it out, and you have to know what you need to do with this rebrand. Like once you're rebranded, now what? Because if you don't have all these things sorted out, downstream, you will have problems. And always understand this, what the audience thinks your rebranding is and what you think the rebrand is are always two different things. This is the gap where most brands think. Okay. Long before you actually hire an agency, you have already lost the battle, because probably you have no idea what you want to accomplish with this rebrand and how your audiences will react to this rebrand. What do they think about your existing brand and whether they are ready for a rebrand or not. All these things matter. Okay. So if you don't have clear answers here, don't just start something on a whim, is what we are saying.
Yeah, I think I have seen examples where companies have done a lot of rebranding activities, and they have done customer consumer testing and things like that. Even then, those brands have failed. So,
Yeah.
so those rebranding activities have failed. Generally these things happens because you are rebranding because you want to rebrand. There's a new brand manager, there is a new marketing head. They want to make an impact. They want to mark their stamp on the brand, so they do a change. But that's it's not going to work. Sometimes companies just do rebranding because they believe they have grown enough, and now they are not growing, and the problem is the brand, and then they just changed it. And what they realize that they have actually lost market share after that, because what you have done, people don't like it. So
True.
don't, please be clear why you are doing it. Please be clear why you are doing it, and there has to be strong logic and the reasoning behind it. The reasoning
True.
should be based out of the market reality, not your mental assumption. And you need to also understand that where the customer is very very important. you know Sometimes some brands are rebranding activities are created too long in future. Customer is not ready to accept that, and then those brands fail. So that is another thing you need to pay attention to. Okay, always understand that the customer is churning. So who is your customer today might not be customer tomorrow. But you need to ensure that you don't do branding for the customers who already moved out of your kitty. Plan for your customer who is now or in near future. So that is another
True.
thing.
Yeah, true. See, the reason is always very important. We actually had a company approach us who wanted to do a rebranding, and when we asked them why, they said that we saw the London School of Economics do a rebrand, and we were very impressed by kind of logo and the other things that they have done. So we also want to do it. Don't do that because it serves absolutely no purpose, and you end up sinking a lot of capital and effort into it, which doesn't take you anywhere. So you have to be very clear there.
Yeah,
Okay?
Shruti, one more
So
thing, Shruti,
know what is it.
Shruti, one more thing, Shruti, is that, please don't mistake that we are saying don't do rebranding. We are not saying that at all.
No, no, no.
Yeah, what we're only saying is that there has to be a there has to be a clear
Be
reason.
clear. Yeah,
Be clear why you're
exactly.
doing it. Okay, and the reasoning has to be very strong. Not just because you are the new marketing head and you want to do rebranding because you want to leave your mark on the brand name. You want to say that 10 years later that I work for this company and this is the brand I did. That should not be the reason.
True. Very true. And I would say this that see, we are not saying that don't do rebranding because rebranding, I believe, is inevitable for every brand. After some time, you have to rebrand. It always does not amount to a logo change, but you have to rebrand because as the market evolves, you have to evolve as well. Okay,
Yeah,
you have to re-examine your brand and its position in the market, and you have to evolve as well. So it is
yeah,
kind of inevitable, but be very clear,
yeah,
is what we are saying.
yeah. One more thing, Shukti, is that at times you want to refresh your presentations, you want to refresh the way your website is looking, and things like that. That all is okay. That all is not rebranding. Okay, just
Yeah,
that is part and parcel of thing that you make things fresh, you change the copy, you change the messaging and things. That's all okay. Okay, that's not a rebranding. That's just basically updating on a regular basis. You change the homepage of the website, you change the way things are looking like and all that. That all is okay as long as they fit in your brand guidelines. Is perfectly fine. Okay, so 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 small minute changes will keep happening all the time. That's perfect. That's not a problem at all. Okay, so please
yeah,
do that. That nobody is stopping you from doing it. Rebranding is much larger. Okay, much larger, where you change the way logo looks, the color scheme that you're using and things like that. There has to be a reason underneath behind it. Okay, so that's what we are saying.
yeah. In fact, I would like to say it's more than a logo or color update. See,
Yeah,
what is it? Number one, rebranding is like a brand refresh. Okay? Oftentimes, people think that is all there is to it. But the thing is, this is just one aspect. A visual update which modernizes, like if you look at this Apple logo's evolution, like I have given. So you can see how it has evolved from this very old-timey kind of logo with Sir Isaac Newton and the Apple. And then from there, we have the minimalistic, very sleek kind of bitten Apple logo now. So this is one. Next, we have the partial rebrand. So you have a clear shift in messaging and tone. There is some update of visual elements. And this usually happens when the market undergoes a significant change. Okay. And in this case, the brand's name may not change or soul may not change, but the way it communicates. that evolves. Okay. If you think of, we will have a look at other examples as well here, but you can think of every company which has updated its logos. The company did not become fundamentally different. Like a brand like Rolls Royce, when they rebranded, the company did not become fundamentally different. It was still about luxury, it was still about finesse and class and British automotive engineering and royalty and everything. But the way the brand presented itself to the new generations, that evolved. Okay. Well, then we have the full rebrand where everything changes. Like the brand's name changes, the logo, the messaging, everything changes. This is not mere design project. This is full business transformation. You can do that with partial rebrand as well. We will have a look at brands which have completely overhauled their businesses by rebranding partially as well. Okay? But remember that if you are rebranding and if you don't know why you are doing it, you will not know what to do. Unless the problem is clear to you, you don't know what is the solution that you need to design. Okay? So be very careful here. Now, what is the most dangerous thing that you can do with your rebranding? Okay. If you think a rebranding is merely a brand refresh, that is, you update your packaging, your color, and your logo, and that is it does not work out. Okay. Because that is refreshing your brand, kind of surface level. Okay. So, if you treat a fundamental business problem as something which needs a facelift, it is not going to solve anything. In fact, it is going to make things much worse. Then you have the same brand with the same problem, but with a different shape. It does not solve anything. Okay. And the reverse of that is also equally damaging. If your brand just needs slight makeover, you need to just update the font or the color palette. And instead of that, you're going and fully rebranding it. You're changing your positioning. You're alienating your audiences. You're basically throwing away all the equity that you gathered in the last 20 years or so. Okay. This is something which Tropicana realized a very hard way. Okay? They actually did not need anything new. They just wanted a brand refresh, but they treated it as something which needed to be much bigger. So they went for a like complete kind of rebrand there. They just did not change their name, but everything apart from that changed. And they needed a better packaging design, but instead of that, they changed everything about the brand. Cost them $30 million within 2 months were wiped out. So this is what faulty rebranding without any logic can do. Know what your brand needs, know what problem to solve. Don't just rebrand because you're feeling like it. There is no logic to it.
Yeah, I think it's a classic example of
Yeah,
you know diluting your equity. The people
yeah,
people saw you, you related with you, loved you for something, and then because you needed a packaging change, you just went ahead and changed everything.
yeah.
And suddenly people you know uh, this is a business which depends on shelf recognition. You are sitting on the
True,
shelf of a marketplace. People see you in a specific way, and they love you for that specific way, and then you go and change everything, and now you're no longer visible to them, and then you lose out, and then you lose sales big time because they are not able to recognize you.
true.
And
Absolutely true.
not only that, that the edge that you had by showing the fresh fruit, you lose that to something that looks very artificial. So
So
that's how you
sorry,
lose
actually, I
your
had to,
that's how you lose your equity, and that's how you lose your market position.
yeah, yeah. So sorry about that. Actually, I was running out of charge and the socket kind of malfunctioned, so I had to plug it in. So anyway, thanks a lot for explaining that, Avinash. And let us look at, you know, how this can be dangerous, yes, and when you need to rebrand. First of all, your rebrand has to solve a problem. Okay? If you cannot answer what you will accomplish with a rebrand, please don't do it. Okay? See, like the problem with Tropicana, people pick up a Tropicana without even thinking about it because people are used to that kind of packaging, that same kind of lettering and everything there. Okay, but the moment the look of the brand changes, they go to the department store and they don't know what to pick from the shelf. Okay. So this actually solves nothing. You should only, rebrand in very specific cases. Number one, you're speaking to a completely different audience now. Let's say you have entered a new territory, you have launched in a new market, and there is a merger or acquisition. This is very common when brands undergo acquisition or merger. The whole company structure, the business, everything changes. So they have to make sure that their new brand actually reflects that change in identity and the direction. Like, for example, when L&T, they acquired Mindtree, they rebranded as LTI, okay, L&T Infotech. So these kind of things will be there. And there is next problem, the brand has accumulated some sort of negative perception. This is extremely common. A lot of times, unsavory things happen. There is some sort of reputational damage that the company has undergone. In that case, a rebrand may help. Okay, it may not be able to recover from that organically, so it thinks of completely changing itself. Then your business has fundamentally changed, but the brand hasn't caught up. Let's say earlier, if you think of Samsung, for example, I'm not saying that Samsung is doing a bad job right now. Samsung started with fish, and then it today it is, the electronics giant that it is. Okay? So everything else about the company apart from the name, it did change. Okay, and this is essential because when you yourself have changed, you need to message your audience in a way that connects with them, that connects with your new reality. So that is essential. And then the brand has outgrown its identity. If you remember that Apple logo, the first logo that I showed you, it was this very old monolith, this very old timey kind of medieval looking scrolly type of logo with Sir Isaac Newton sitting there and the apple shining on top of him. Now, this kind of a logo does not work today. So obviously the brand had to evolve. Okay. So that is what we are looking at. Never rebrand because you're bored with your logo. Like I said, the prospect came to us and say that we want to change because I really like the way London School of Economics changed their whole, look, and I want to do that. That is not a valid reason. Please be careful about what problem you want to solve. Avinash,
So
you're
sorry.
on mute.
Yeah. In fact, Shruti, I want to say that, in fact, the boring things are actually work very, very well. And as long as those boring things work for people, it works very well. That is one. Number two is this, that the people recognize the boring things, and those boring things sometimes really work for them. So just because you're
Oh,
getting bored,
absolutely.
don't change it. Don't change it because there are equity sitting there, and leverage that equity. Refresh.
Yeah.
Obviously, you will refresh, but changing is a big decision, especially if consumer recognize you. There are brands who nobody knows. Okay, they change the brand name, logo, and everything. Nothing happens. But when customer recognize you for who you are, what you do, how you look like, then it becomes a very, very important decision that why you are changing. And one more
Yeah.
thing we talked about is that sometimes, like for example, you talked about Samsung example, from fish to electronics and now mobile phones and stuff like that. Okay, look at today's business scenario. Say for example, you're an IT company, and AI has fundamentally shifted the ball. okay, and you want to talk about the artificial intelligence and things like that, you might have to upgrade the way you are looking like, okay. uh, but when you are making that change, when you're making the change, make the change such a way that you are uniquely positioned with that change. And the change is going to be very important, because that will also put you in terms of the current times. So the business that fundamentally change, then definitely it is required. Negative perception, they definitely required. It is not required because you are getting bored. That bored thing could be a great equity for you. That might be driving your
Yeah,
business right now. And sometimes we think
yeah,
that's a liability, but most of the time that is actually an asset for your brand. Recognition,
yeah.
recognition build trust. When people start to recognize you, it builds trust. And if you change that recognition, you might not know overnight the trust evaporates. And if trust evaporates, there won't be any business. So please see
Yeah.
why people trust you. You know, which part of your brand is actually driving the trust. It's very, very important to capture that thought.
Yes.
And sometimes the trust could be sitting in that fresh looking orange on a Tropicana can.
Very true. In fact, we will see how one of the most well-known brands in the world, they completely uh, did not get this memo and they completely did their branded later. Okay. So now, after that, you have to understand why do rebrands fail? Okay, even with the best of intention. Number one, wrong intent. Like we said, never change it because you are bored. It is not a real problem. If there is nothing to solve, don't tinker with it. Secondly, you start designing before you have a strategy, and this is something which is extremely common, unfortunately. Someone says, we want a rebrand, and they immediately start drawing the sketches for the logo update and everything. They don't have a clear idea about what we are going to do. Do you want to keep the same positioning? Do you want to change the same positioning? Are you appealing to a new audience? Is there something which is looking outdated that you want to change? You don't know how to go about this. Visual identity, see, it does not exist in isolation. It actually is a manifestation of something. It expresses a strategy. It cannot substitute for lack of strategy. No matter how great your revamped logo looks, if it is not strategically designed, it will not help you. Okay? If your habit loop is breaking, this means if you're destroying your equity that the brand was built on, which means some elements of familiarity that the brand has acquired and that the customers swear by, if you're destroying that, then it is going to become a problem. Like we saw in that, Tropicana example, the fresh orange sitting on their packaging. That is what people are looking for. That very recognizable Tropicana font in bold. That is what they're looking for. You change that, you are actually throwing away your equity. Then zero internal alignment. The chairman does not want it. The CEO wants it. Employees don't believe in it. Customers, they don't know what to make out of it, and your sales and service teams are all over the place with it. They are still using the old language. Okay, they are still talking about the old taglines, the old positioning and everything. But on your website, completely new positioning or completely new values are sitting. The tagline has updated on all your packaging. There is a huge mismatch. This will cost you. So you have to make sure that you have the strategy completely prepared, that once I launch the rebranding, these are the things that I have to do. Otherwise, it is not going to work. And then we have the surface level execution. Okay. You look at it that, you know, you're just rolling out the logo, not throughout the business. It is updating on your social media handle. It is updating on your website. That's it. That is not going to work. You have to take the whole team on board. You have to clearly communicate it. You have to also tell your customers why this has happened and what they should expect from this new identity. All of that has to be in place. Otherwise, it will fail. Avinash, you are on mute.
In fact, I believe that if you want to do rebranding, you know, discuss with the group, discuss with the people who are actually in touch with the consumers or customers first. What are the challenges are they facing? Are they facing any challenges? What is their, what do they think their customer feel about the brand? Okay, do they feel that the brand is relevant to the customers or not? And start from there. The
True.
brand is felt by your customer and consumer. Talk to your retailers, your dealers, and people like that to understand what they feel. And if what they feel is not relevant today, what what works for a consumer today, only then you go for it. Rebranding should not be top down. When you're launching a brand, probably it could be top down, that you are the founder, you are thinking about it, you came up with the brand name, and you're starting to deploy your thoughts and things like that. But when you're rebranding, start bottom up.
Yeah.
Starting bottom up is going to be very, very important, because then it will be grounded to reality. And if
Yes.
you don't do that, then
And
it is going to become a big problem.
one of the things I would also say here is that a lot of companies don't take their employees into consideration when they actually go for the rebrand. Your employees are your ready-made focus group. They know your brand. They have their own attachment to the brand, and they are also looking at it from the point of view of the customers. They are the ones who stay in touch with the actual customers. So don't ignore them. It should not be that you have decided that this is what the new thing is going to be, and you're just asking your employees to go along with it. Don't do that. Ask them genuinely, take their opinion. What do you think? What needs to change? What is special about us? What is it that people want to retain? What is it that people want to forget when it comes to our brand? And take them into account and roll out also with them as your primary level of audience.
Yeah,
Because without employees, you cannot do it.
yeah. One more thing, Shakti, I want to say is that if I think of rebranding, obviously start bottoms up. That is one
Hmm.
thing. Second thing I would like to say is that always create a list of assets and liabilities. Okay, you know, brands assets and brands liabilities define a brand equity. But the point is that what are the things that work for the brand, and what are the things which don't work for the brand. Make a list. Make a laundry list of those things. Because if you're a Tropicana, then you will know that the orange actually smiles at people. The way the brand name is written, that smiles at people, and you will understand that's the biggest asset you have got in a shop, and you will not surrender that. Okay, so that's the most important thing. Create a list of your assets and liability of that brand. Keep the assets, address the liabilities. Many times, what happens that we think the assets are boring, and we junk them, and we are only sitting with liabilities, and we create something new. So you have a brand with lot of liabilities and no real assets, and that's when the brand fails.
Yeah. In fact, we will, right now, we will actually look at two of these classic examples of rebranding fails. Okay. Number one, Pepsi. Okay. So Pepsi decided it needed to refresh itself. In 2008, it wanted to just change its logo. Okay. And one of the, primary lessons it learned in a very hard way, which we always keep in mind as marketers, is a brand is always owned by its customers and not the boardroom. Okay, your brand does not exist outside your customers. Pepsi hired an agency and they created some 27-page document where they had a lot of good things being said. They had convinced themselves this is a good idea. and they created something which was called the smirk logo because it does look like a smirk. Okay. And they were so happy with it. They redesigned their collaterals with this new smirk logo and it went to the market, immediately catching fire because customers were so unhappy. They trashed it, and the backlash was so massive that they had to backtrack. Okay. The logo redesign, if you can even call it that, alone took 1 million. And then think of the hundreds of millions the company actually spent on updating their packaging and other collaterals. Okay. And also marketing the new logo. So all of that down the drain because they actually had to go back and restore the old logo. And Pepsi learned a very, very difficult lesson that time. Okay. That don't change something which is not broken. And they figured out that nostalgia actually plays a big role with their brand, even when they are a youth oriented brand. Because in 2023, its new logo came out. This was a callback to the 90s style. Okay. This actually was well received. The earlier one, the 2008 one, was a huge ego driven rebrand. It ended up being a very expensive failure. And the 2023 revamp actually worked. In fact, in India, if you look at it, Pepsi actually went back to its old slogan of Ye Dil Mange Mo. And it has been doing much better, at least, than what it was doing in 2008 after this disaster of a rebrand. Then the next one, and I think this is, now become the stuff of legends, the Jaguar rebrand of 2024. The brand which once, went toe to toe with Mercedes was very sexy, very irreverent, extremely popular, and it was defined by the jumping Jaguar. Okay, this icon was what it was. It rebranded completely, took out the cat, and instead we were left with whatever this is. Okay, and it kept, it trashed its heritage. It gave away its most recognizable asset. It gave away its equity. Instead of that, it came up with something which was like, copy nothing, and it was supposed to be very arty, very avant-garde and all that. Why? Because Jaguar was launching their EV vehicles. We don't know what is the link between launching EV vehicles and this kind of a directionless makeover, but it did happen. Completely alienated its base. It became a matter of joke, and there was absolutely no evidence that audiences even wanted this rebrand. Okay. So if you are repositioning or rebranding yourself without knowing why you are doing it or what problem is it going to solve, Jaguar has been experiencing money troubles. But why they thought that going in this direction and changing their leaping cat would probably help them solve these money troubles is not clear. And it was a gamble that they lost. Okay? So don't do things like this. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, even the biggest brands in the world keep falling for these things.
yeah. There are so many things screaming out of it, saying that this is not
Yeah,
right, this is not right. It's surprising that people don't realize and don't notice such things when they are doing it. And you know, believe me, I will not say that marketers, uh, didn't know about it. They knew about it, but they still make that mistake because they don't start bottoms up. They don't talk to their customers, their sales guys and people like that, and it starts from the boardroom,
true.
and it becomes the fancy
This was
of
a vanity exercise.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, refresh. Like in Pepsi's example, you talked about that brand wanted to refresh. Why would you change what is working for you? You want to
yeah,
refresh, have a new campaign and things like that. And in Jaguar, this is disastrous. Leaving their biggest asset. People recognize Jaguar by the jumping Jaguar, and then that's when you think of Jaguar, that's the first thing comes to your mind.
first thing that comes to your mind.
And you say
Exactly.
that no, I don't want that. What is the come first thing to my mind? I want to do something else. That's the biggest asset you got. That's the biggest asset you got. How can you sacrifice that? So
Yeah,
that's why the
true.
asset liability thing is extremely critical and important.
But look at this, when we say that there was no need for this kind of a, complete detour. Look at this, Jaguar is launching electric vehicles. Now, Jaguar as a brand has always been about untamed power. We don't know why this angle actually cannot be interpreted in terms of electric vehicles. Okay. If you look at this, one of the ads, every Jaguar can do things machines can. So that's a huge promise. And instead of that, we go into copy nothing, which looks like it's something for artists. We don't know exactly why this happened. So it alienated everybody. It did not understand what the audiences liked about its brand, and it dug its own hole in that uh, with that rebrand. So right now, um, so sorry about this. We what we recommend with rebranding. Number one, when you rebrand, do a rebrand that your employees can't explain. Okay. If your rebrand cannot be explained by your employees, is a rebrand your customers won't believe. Like I said, treat your employees as your focus. Okay. If your own people, like the people in sales, the customer service, people at the front desk, the leadership, they cannot articulate what this changes and why is it happening. This disconnect will show in every customer interaction. Okay. You cannot convince yourself, you cannot convince the customer. Secondly, your leadership has to be aligned with this rebrand. Okay. And unfortunately, you won't believe how much disconnect is there within the same board with the rebrands. Okay. One of the most common hidden failure points here is that a leadership team is not actually unified. If your marketing department is pushing it, but the CEO is not on board, this will reflect, this tension always reflects in whatever rebranding is happening in your positioning, in your logo update, in your website, everywhere it will reflect. Okay. And understand this, your employees cannot be overlooked. Before you put it out to the market, test your rebrand with your employees. Okay. Because a brand is not just something which you sell to a customer, it is also a set of feelings and values and vision that some people live by. Your employees are those people. Okay. So if you cannot, if you cannot convince your employees, if you cannot roll it out internally properly, you cannot brief your employees properly about what this rebrand is and why it is happening, then you cannot have a successful rebrand in the market. Okay. This will fail. And this is something which we have seen a lot of times. So when you are when you are rebranding, we recommend that you first look at your employees and then go out into the market.
Shukti, we have maximum 5 minutes to finish. Okay.
Yeah, I know we don't have a lot of slides actually.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we rebrand, what we do in Brand Loom is that we follow the root framework. So first, R for reason. Is there a strategic business reason behind this? Is there a merger or acquisition? Did we enter a new territory? Did the audience change? Is there some sort of reputational issue that we are taking care of? Unless we know that and we can define that in one or two clear lines, we don't go for the rebrand because then it will not solve anything. Okay. Then original equity has to be considered. What should be protected and what should be discarded with this rebrand? Okay. See, with Jaguar, we saw that they discarded their most important original equity asset and they brought in something else. So that is not the right way. If you look at other brands, okay, with Amul, that Amul butter girl has never changed. So they know that this is our most valuable, most recognizable visual asset and they protect it. You should know that about your brand as well, and not just in terms of visuals, but your positioning, your other assets, your packaging, everything. Third, ownership. Okay. Is your leadership unified on this? There has to be one person. We as an agency always look at this one person who represents the company for us, because otherwise nothing ever gets done. Without that one person voicing the unified opinion of the entire company, the rebrand will be designed by multiple people, because the CEO will come and say that I like the color pink, please put pink. The marketing head will come and say that I need to make it more bold, so it will be more bold. And in the end, the brand that could have been is just diluted into irrelevance. Then we have the transformational readiness. Is this business ready to live this brand internally? Do they have a rollout plan in place? Do they know what to tell their employees? Do they know who are the people who have to be briefed? What are the values that they have to, live by when they talk about this rebrand? A brand which does not align with its employees and instead goes straight to the market always fails. Okay? This route check is something which we follow, is something which gives us good results. And I believe that this is something which companies should do too internally before they sign off on the rebranding. Okay? It seems simple. It actually is pretty simple, but very difficult to execute. Now, coming to what good rebranding looks like. So, I would like to just show you what we did for a client. Okay. So, this is the old, we had this IT client, and this is what their old interface looks like. Their website, as you can see, it looks a bit dated and a lot of different colors and everything. There was no clear positioning or messaging being coming, which was being delivered, and it was not communicating in a human way. Okay. Now, after that, when we rebranded, there was a clear, definite visual direction here. It felt more warm and human. And with an IT brand, what we wanted to show here is that technology is basically meaningless if it does not impact human lives. And we wanted to bring out those sides. Okay. So we crafted the messaging accordingly. We try to show trust signals, which signal that this is technology which has human connection, and highlighted its USP also. So this is one. Okay. For big brands, one of the most recognizable rebrands in the history is that of Old Spice. In the 1950s and all, it was very nautical. It was about smelling fresh and this old school, idea of being a gentleman and what a man should smell like. And then by the late 90s, Old Spice had lost its market share to Axe, and a lot of things were happening in the market. They completely pivoted. Keeping their old logo and their old name, they changed everything else. Their positioning, their messaging, the way they interacted, the personality, everything changed. And it was a huge hit. It came like a breath of fresh air, and it grabbed back market share from its rivals. So Old Spice rebranding is one of the very successful big brand rebrands that we know of. Okay? Then, if we look at complete rebrand, we had Grofers before this. Okay? And after that, it changed into Blinkit. And we don't need to tell you how popular Blinkit is. It's India's last minute app. The value proposition was very, very clear. If you want speedy deliveries, you go to Blinkit, and from your groceries to everyday things, Blinkit is going to be there. And it has been doing successfully so far. From pure pricing based kind of messaging, now it has shifted to value proposition, and it is working out pretty well for them. So, before we close this, we want every brand owner to ask three questions. If we are going to rebrand, are we actually solving a real problem or avoiding one? If you have problems with your supply chain, with your raw materials and other things, it will not be solved with a logo update. So know where the problem is and approach it logically. Okay. Second, do we know what our customers love about us right now? This is where the equity part comes in. know what people associate with us, what are the good things, what are the recognizable visual assets and other things, keep them, and then take that action. Gap did this. Gap took away its own logo, and then it created such a huge backlash for them. Then came back to their old logo. Are we ready to live this new brand internally before we launch it externally? Like we said, if you have not aligned it with your employees, with your internal teams, then it will not work. A brand that cannot be justified to its own employees cannot be justified to its audience and cannot be rolled out to a larger market. Okay. So this kind of uh, unthought of rollout will actually do damage more than it does any good. So if you want to go for a rebrand, ask these three questions to yourself and your board, answer them truthfully, then take the decision. So that brings us to the end of this presentation. And I believe that we have a couple of questions here. So Arnab says that, what do you suggest for yesteryear's popular brands trying to make a comeback after a long, such as Campa Cola under Reliance? So see, first of all, why do is there a market for this comeback is something which I would say that the brand has to look at first. You know, the time that Campa Cola was, that time we did not have a lot of soft drinks and all. And right now, apart from the big ones like Pepsi and Coke, we have a lot more beverage options. So is there a market or not? The name Campa Cola, the brand Campa Cola, does it have enough followers or equity to actually justify its comeback or see it, um, you know, again reassert itself in the market? Is should be the starting point of these brands. It is going to be very, very different for each brand. Some brands carry a lot of weight and emotional, nostalgic kind of fondness. A lot of brands, unfortunately, with time have eroded away with that. So that has to be the starting point, I believe.
Yeah, I would like to add, Shakti,
So
that
yeah,
see, if you look at soft drink market is generally a market of where young audience is there. Okay, so Campa Cola, when it was operating, and it was loved by people, it was a very strong brand. So those audiences are actually aged. So and they
yes,
know Campa Cola as the old brand. So today's younger audience don't know Campa Cola actually. They will consider
true.
Campa Cola as a new brand.
As a new entrant, yeah,
Yes, a new entrant. So when you're launching one brand with which used to have an equity, the brand was actually dead because it exists, it ceased to exist. And if you're launching a new brand, consider it as a new brand launch only. Okay, because your audience that is going to consume the product does not know you. So it is like a new brand launch. You to
mhm,
understand that how you will position against the big wigs like Pepsi and Coke, how you are going to position, what makes you uh, what what makes you stand in front of them, and you have to identify that, and then that's how you position yourself. In case of
yeah,
Reliance, one thing which is very very apparent is this, that because of their stores, they already have a huge shells to play. So just like that, if they exist and they start to put their product in the marketplace, they will start to sell. So that is something which is
true,
very big edge for them, because they are going to put their product, the Capacula, in Reliance stores, and just because of that, the brand is going to sell. Okay.
yeah.
So what they did,
And I would
what,
just,
hmm.
yeah,
So
please go ahead,
just
Avinash.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. So they just put the product, they run some campaigns, and what they did was is that they, because they were the new entrant, what they did was is that they played the game that Reliance always plays. They priced it lower compared to competition, and people lapped it up. And that's
True.
how
Yeah.
that's the market penetration exercise, and which Reliance has mastered over the years, and they always play that game. They
True. Very
underprice,
true.
place the product in the marketplace, and that's how they grow. And that's what they are doing
True.
in this case as well.
Yeah. In fact, I would like to point out, the relaunch of Dhara, the cooking oil. Earlier in the 90s, Dhara used to be very big, and they had this very popular ad of a kid running away from home. And then he goes back because uncle reminds him that his mom has made jalebis. And they tried to have that same ad in the 2020 around that time, with the storyline being that that kid who was running away earlier, his kid is again running away, and again he comes back for jalebis. It did not work out because the nostalgia or the memory of Dhara, the brand that was there, it had become stagnant with the target audiences that were there. That group does not exist right now, so it did not work. So I believe that that is the end of the questions here. So thank you, everyone. Next week we will be back again with another exciting topic. And bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.